Hello, welcome to our session this evening. Uh, this is communication excellence, and I'm going to be talking about the uh, newsletter we did that had to do with faith, family, and um, how they kind of tie with leadership and how you kind of don't want to try to separate all of that in your life. You want to kind of figure out how to make it all work together, which is probably a good way to think about it when you get to it. It's something that I'm guessing most people won't. I have to get my drinks here. Most people won't be having a discussion about because they don't want to touch it. But the fact is, in a lot of people's lives, I'm not sure that you're a believer or that you even care about being a believer or which believer you are. Uh, Most people have some sense of faith. The fact that you don't believe is, in fact, a form of faith when you think about it. So uh, I just wanted to take take a little time and at least talk about it because it's impacting not only business, it's impacting our politics and our world events and a whole bunch of things. People are trying to tie those things together. And when they do, it always ends up a big mess in the end. And so I just thought, well, maybe what we'll do is try to see if we can figure out um what's going on with all of that and try to figure that out as part of the process. What I'd like to do is get over here and see if I can uh, get on Substack here and see if I can see the Substack group on here. It's kind of like I'm supposed to be able to go to the home here and be able to see us online, but I'm having a hard time doing that. It's one of those things where when you get to it, uh, it's kind of difficult to see or make happen. Let's see. This says that I'm supposed to be able to look at that. There I go. Okay. Okay. There we go. All right. Now I'm seeing myself in, so I can see I'm on Substack too. So in case you decide to join me and type something into the comments there or send me something nasty, I don't know. I'm not much of a podcaster, so it's not impacting me one way or the other. If you have some questions, I'd love to answer them for you, but you can put them in comments. You can email them to me. We can get together after this show and talk about them on a live video conference. Either way, I'm open to doing all of that if it's going to help you be more successful. Um, today, today is a different world. Today, we're living in a dynamic where um, people are mixing up everything, and I find that awful interesting. But the reality is, um, if you're running an organization or a business, well, let's just say organization, because organization, I use organization a lot because it covers the full range. It covers businesses, large and small. It covers nonprofits that are out there. It covers universities. It covers education. It covers church and friendships and family. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And just a whole bunch of other things. It includes the world that we live in, for that matter. All of that, you think about it, wherever there's groups of people, there are organizations, and wherever there are organizations, there are leaders. Yeah, excuse me. Allergies are still high in Oklahoma today, and so hopefully I'm taking some medications to may overcome that. So if I kind of go wandering off, it might be because of the medication, but not really. Oh, my shaking doesn't bother you. I have to move slow when I'm drinking. Otherwise, I put it all over the screen of myself and everything else. That's something at my age, gosh, I'm turning 80 this July. And at my age, things just happen that you didn't know were going to happen all through your life, and all of a sudden here they are at this age. And essential shaking is one of those things. I don't remember putting it on the application form when I was born that I wanted to have uh, essential shaking. I will also probably be off the air sometime around May, June, maybe even into July. Um, it appears I need a hip replacement, so that will be fun to do. All of that comes with a little bit of age, but the good news is it fixes the problem and makes it a lot easier for me to do things later, like walk. So there's a lot going on in people's lives, but you just have to take it as it comes to you and recognize you have the capacity to handle it, and you will handle it, and most people do. Um, so that's kind of what I want to talk about tonight, the impact. So have all these organizations, and they all intermingle, and it has an impact on the way people behave in between organizations, or it also has impacts on expectations of what people have of organizations and what organizations have of people. I have heard ever since I stepped into the business world, you got to keep personal life separate from business. Keep personal life separate from business, and don't get involved with people's personal life. Don't get involved with their personal whatever problems they're having. And I'm here to tell you that after 50 years of after about 45 years of being in consulting and um, working with people and organizations, and as a leader, executive leader, uh, you can't do that. You can't do that and have any concern or any empathy for your people whatsoever. So I would tell you that's if you're wanting and looking for leadership advice. Let me raise this up a little bit. There we go. If you're wanting to look for leadership advice, I would tell you get to know your people. Get to know your people, and I'm not sure you want to delve into trying to bail people out of things, but I know bosses that have, and because it was a good employee and that person needed the second chance in life. So I've seen that happen, and some people call that leading with your heart, and that's part of what we're going to talk about this evening. So let me just kind of move over here and let's see. I don't know if I got my system all totally set up here, um, and I don't. So I'll just use this. This will work fine. Um, let's move on over here to the presentation side of things. Okay, there we go. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the what I call the leadership edge. It's about faith, and it's about family, and it's about ties that you have with other people, friends, churches, professional organizations, all that kind of stuff. All of that personal stuff that we're not supposed to talk about in business. But if you don't, you really are not a very good leader. You're going to end up, if you care about people and you want them to follow you, if you want them to if you paid any attention to all these series, you found out I've said, you're a good leader when the people come to you and they say, you are a leader. We want you as our leader. We give you permission to be our leader. We need you to be our leader. When you hear things like that, then you know you've pretty well entered the realm of advanced leadership, or what I call Renaissance leadership. So, the, part of this is when you're involved in this, there's so many ties to the same thing that's going on in your family. I tell people we're talking about interpersonal communication, the impact it has on your faith and your family and the ties that you have between work and yourself and work and your faith and work and your family. And it happens. It happens. Life is not isolated. We are a society. We are a social society. People call this social media, and I'm telling you, I don't think it's very social anymore. But it, your family is social. Your work environment is social, and it is what we make it to be. And as leaders, it's part of our responsibility to make it something we really enjoy doing, that we really can get our arms around and we have fun doing. So I just want to kind of focus on that a little bit tonight. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and think about this. How do you feel about your relationship that you have with your family, the relationship your family has with each other, which right now today could be very, very split over something as stupid as politics. And if you're doing that, I'm sorry, that's a stupid thing to do. It's a stupid thing to give up your relationship with your children or your brothers and sisters or whatever over some dumbass political thing that it changes every 4 years. And it's gone over my almost 80 years, it's gone back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And we bounce around and we let it toss us this way and that way. And it's really kind of stupid to do that. Now, people are doing it all the time. So, are we all stupid? I think so, probably to a little bit of an extent. Was the lady that was talking about Donald Trump and said that basically he was a, well, I won't say it, but it was a nasty thing. It doesn't conjure up good thoughts if you think about it. And then the guy asked her, "Didn't you vote for him 3 times?" And she said, "Yeah, I guess that makes me an idiot." So there are some people recognizing this. There are some people recognizing this. Uh, the thing I think is important that I've covered over the leadership paradigm and the pain points that we covered and we talked about, and what we learned from those about interpersonal communication, the impact it has on those, and your ability to regulate your environment to some extent, and that that relationship is really pretty dynamic and pretty interlaced. You're involved in all of that's impacting, all of those aspects are impacting each other. So, when we talk about that, when we talk about faith and the family and the friends and those kinds of things. We need to kind of get an idea of what we're talking about when we do that from that standpoint. So, uh, the heart of the matter, if you want to start moving into the spiritual realm, communication as a spiritual practice is um, something we need to talk about because there's some good things going on about that, and there are some not so good things going on about that um, that we need to stay focused on. Interpersonal communication is a means whereby we, as humans, all interact with each other. I mean, there's probably no, if you try to count the number of words that you use today, the number of different interactions you had at different levels with different people today, they'd probably fill up a chapter in your journal book, you know. And then you do that every day. You do that every day. Uh, so, in this process of doing this, the vehicle you connect and make all of these interactions with others with is communication. Now, we think most people kind of define communication as talking and hearing, and you've heard me say this several times that yes, that's true. And it's true probably a large portion of your day. But there are other times where interpersonal communication demands of you more understanding of that communication process and what we mean by interpersonal. Okay? Interpersonal is where there's more than one person involved in the conversation. And frankly, I found out that wherever there's more than one person involved, uh, you begin with interpersonal communication and you pretty much end with interpersonal communication. So you're doing that from that standpoint. There's just a lot of things going on that you're dealing with that interpersonal communication is involved with. So that's one thing I want you to realize. And I don't think people, I'm moving a few things around here so I can see something a little better. Okay, there we go. Um, I am speaking about this to some extent more than you might want me to because I want you to be overemphasized with this feeling that connection is what drives everything. It drives your relationship between you and your spouse. It drives the relationship between you and your parents and your children. And they all are different connecting perspectives. You're trying to regulate and get your arms around that every day of your life that you're living. Now, uh, what happens is communication can be make your lack of communication expertise could make that miserable, and your mastery of interpersonal communication could make that less miserable and hopefully on the positive side really enjoyable. So just to understand how much interpersonal communication is working in your life is very important. So church is a place, speaking of religion, we'll just jump right in. Churches are places where values are often developed and learned, and sometimes they're changed. Sometimes they're changed. may not be going to church, and then all of a sudden you go to church and you have a spiritual experience, and uh, your values begin to change. They begin to change in terms of how you treat other people. That then is manifested through communication. But the communication process still needs to happen regardless of whether your values change or not. But how you impact other people, whether they want to hear what you have to say or not, often has to do with the values that, that they have and your ability to recognize those and adapt to them in a way that makes somebody want to communicate with you. You can certainly come at somebody, hit on one of their core values, and really piss them off, and then they are not open to hear anything you have to say. I don't care how logical it is and how correct it is. You've just tuned them out. You've just tuned them out. So, um, church is one of those places, and I talk to people about communication relative to church. Family is the other place that the vast majority of your value structure is what I call your core value structure. Now, if you can think of values in terms of a centrifugal circle, that's several circles, and they keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller until you have just a small circle in the middle. But if you started something spinning, centrifugal means the power or the force of it pushes outward, and but the inner core stays pretty stable. But the force develops stronger as you move to the outside. But in this case, it's sort of almost reversed. The core value structure, those core values, you may only have three or four of them. They maybe they formulate around things like love and hate, and things like racism and just general beliefs about life in general. These core values tend to be evolved in your early life and throughout your life. Don't steal, love your neighbor, don't hate them, don't tell a lot of lies, don't do the wrong things. And then they're manifested, for example, in the church environment, they're manifested in, uh, depending on which church you go to, the literatures or the writings of your elders through thousands of years that have, through time, have passed down these rituals, these values, and depending on how you were raised, a lot of the time depends on which values you grasp and hold on to. Um, and you're not going to change those no matter what. Now, if there are other values that aren't near as core, they're values that help you guide your life and sustain some sort of standardization or process in your life, and those kind of move outward to the outer perimeters of the circle. And the closer you get to the outer perimeter of the circles, the more those other values can be influenced by external factors. Those core values, it really takes something tough for you to change your thoughts about the core values. But other things might be style of dress, or you have to, be clean shaven and wear a suit at work. That's a value that you may agree or disagree with. But if you disagree with it, the question is, to what extent along this continuum out here are you prepared to go? I mean, if you're telling me I have a beard I've worked 15 years to grow, and you're telling me I got to cut it just to go to work for you, that might be one of those values I am not going to violate. And therefore I'll find someplace else to work. Or it might be, okay, if I got it, I got it because I really like this job. This looks like a good opportunity. So uh, values come along in sort of groupings, the core values, and then you have this collection of behavior values on the outside of that. Um, and so uh, the, those begin to make patterns of your behaviors, and your behaviors then are basically how people tend to judge who you are and what you're about. And so that all comes through how you communicate with others. Now, if you just live by yourself, if you truly were a hermit and lived by yourself, and you were going to touch no other human being, um, live with the animals, you can take, you don't need anything from anybody ever in your whole life. If you have that kind, then your ability to have these other values are really restricted considerably, and you're probably going to live very close to those core values. But you're going to bump into other people that have different values than you do, and when you learn about those different values, they may make you feel, I've been thinking this way all the time, but wow, I really like this idea, so I'm going to start thinking this way now. And that could be about dress, it could be about entertainment, it could be about just a host of things. The further you get out towards those circles, the more superficial those values tend to be, and you can take them or leave them or whatever. But then others, as you get closer to your core values, you have to think about a little harder. So all of that's going on in your life right now, and all that probably came from your family and how you were brought up in your family. And one of those areas is a church. And a church, and a lot of if religion is part of your life, you have found yourself being impacted by a certain philosophy or a certain approach to religion. Whether you're Islamic, whether you're evangelical, whether you're a Christian, whether you're a Muslim, whether you're of the Jewish faith, or whether you're of Oriental faith, all of these people have their different value structures, and where you attend and learn about your faith, whether it's a mosque or um, a church or somewhere else, then this is where you get together in organizations or group with people who are like minded, and where you discuss these values, where you interact and talk about them, where people counterbalance each other to help you. You were thinking about doing this, but don't, I'm thinking about doing this, or I'm experiencing this right now. I want to do this. And the person says, well, let's think about that. How does that play out in terms of how you feel about your faith? Is that something that is part of what we teach is the right thing to do versus the wrong thing to do? A lot of people are always talking in church about the right things to do. They have something called the fruit of spirit. I think it's somewhere around Galatians 19 to 22, somewhere in there. And for you Christian people, I don't know where it would be in the Jewish or the Muslim or any other. I'd have to go find that. But I bet you there's something like it. And they call it the fruit of spirit. And those are the things that are, if, when you're living with other things you don't want to do. You don't want to get jealous. You don't want to be deceitful. You don't want to be hateful. You don't want to be harmful to other people. I mean, there's a list, okay? And it's not an all inclusive list, but the idea is to give you a general idea of what's right, loving and caring and taking care of others and thinking of others and, not violating uh, the rules that were established for your particular faith. Some of them are pretty significantly restrictive, and others are a little looser. Um, so, all of those things, if you think about it, that church is an organization, it has a leader. I don't know of any leaderless churches. I've looked. People keep telling me about leaderless organizations. I still, in all my years, have never ran into one that really was leaderless. Even if you crash on an island and there are 10 of you that survive, and nobody knows anything about any other person, somebody's going to, as you interact, somebody's going to come to the surface as either knowing more, being stronger, whatever it might be. And that person is going to normally be who people turn to, and you have a leader. All of a sudden, you have a leader of a leaderless group. That's how that evolves. It's continued to evolve. It's why flattening organizations doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's not a natural tendency. What we should be talking about is how can we enhance the leadership structured hierarchical organization? How can we make that better? That's what leadership development is supposed to be doing, but I don't think they've been very successful over the 50 years I've been working with it. I mean, we have had groups of us that have done things. I count myself in one of those, but I count many, many more people that I know that are part of that too, that have help people become better leaders, and they are operating better companies and are better leaders. So I have helped people become better leaders inside a company or an organization, if you will, that are somewhat better, or if not much better, than most of the leaders in that organization based on the development we did. And they're still just one out of 40, 50 people who are in the leadership role. So you have one good leader, and unfortunately, that's the dilemma with leadership development out there now. You can't do it, and social media is not going to impact that. It's not going to make better leaders faster in larger groups. It's just not going to happen. Uh, so anyway, the idea here is the church, for example, is a good place for you to get a grasp on where the values are. So if somebody comes to you and says, I'm a Presbyterian and I go to church every, 4 times a week, and I look at the Old Testament or the New International Version of the Bible, and the Bible's what I go by. That says a lot about what you're going to expect out of somebody who comes to church, or I mean, goes to church, who works for you. You can begin to make some assumptions about their values. Now, I caution you not to overjudge those until you see how these people really act. Because guess what? A lot of people who are brought up within these environments and or choose to work into these environments like a church, whatever, are not committed to everything that's being said. All those things in the fruit of the spirit, all those good things, don't necessarily transfer out into real life situations. So that's one of the dynamics that you have to understand. Right now, we're battling this in the United States of America. Iran's battling it. You have a whole group of people in Iran who don't want to be under a particular, I think, well, I don't know which Muslim sect they are, but a particular Muslim sect in Iran that they run the country as a theocracy, and a lot of the citizens around don't want that, but they're bound by that and they're controlled by that. And that's one of the dynamics that can happen in a church environment is you can believe in all of this stuff, you can do all of this stuff. What creates the church environment is not the Bible. The Bible has some of the most horrendous, sexually driven and really fantastic stories that you can read with the idea that there's some stuff that they're doing and telling you is the right way versus the wrong way. They have to tell these really horrible stories to tell you what kind of things, you know, why that happened and why you don't want to be that way and why this way is a better way. And so, so you know, this information is saying there's a separation from church and state. And there's and the reason is, you know, we don't want a country where you have to live according to this one way of belief. We think having many ways of belief or diverse ways is better. And so, actually, when you start looking at that and start comparing it to your organization, you see a lot of similarities. You can see some similarities to a pastor who is basically saying you've got to toe the line, and an authoritarian boss that says this is the way it ought to be done. Okay, I have seen very few churches when the pastor's up there giving their teaching or their sermon. I've seen very few people raise their hand. Hey, I kind of disagree with that a little bit. Can we talk about it? No, not here. We only have 40 minutes. Come see me after. Well, I like a lot of people's opinions on this, and that they're not going to be 50 or 60 people in your room when I come to visit. So you see the dynamic is you can find all kinds of environments out there that are challenging who you are as an individual, challenging your thought processes, challenging how you think you ought to believe, trying to put restrictions on how you think or should believe. And we call that being unduly influenced. And that's a potential in that church environment. And how that happens is through the interpersonal communication process. So, on the other hand, you could be learning a lot of things that you're going to be taking back to your work environment, like maybe want to live in your work environment with grace and a lack of judgment of other people. So somebody is doing some things and they've said a couple of things about you behind your back to some other people who have told you about that. And the other people are wondering, why aren't you confronting this person? Or why aren't you going, you know, I'm trying to show this person grace. I'm trying not to judge them. This is how I live my life. This is how I want to be. I don't want to go over there and get in a confrontation or an argument with this person. If that's how they think, that's fine. They don't have to be friends with me. Now, if it affects work, then we got to talk about how it's going to affect work. Okay, so there's some dynamics that you can learn that leaders can probably take from some spiritual guidance. And I think these same perspectives I seem to see in Oriental philosophies. I see them in Muslim philosophies. If you truly read it and don't just take sections out that newscasts or somebody wants to make a point about, if you read the whole book, if you really try to get into understanding what they're trying to do with this, whether it's the Quran or the Jewish readings or the Bible, whatever it is, they generally have this thing that there's a general way you should behave in the world for everybody to get along. And that's what we want to take from this. That's what we want to take from this. So that when we say we don't want you to, from a leader's perspective, um, we don't want to say that the evangelical religion, the Christian religion, is the best religion versus the Muslim religion. We don't want to get into that because those are deep-seated core values issues. And it's going to be tough to debate or argue any of those things. And all of them have had thousands of years to define whether they are or not. And somehow we haven't come to an agreement on it. Can you imagine? We haven't come to an agreement in thousands of years between religions of what might be right or wrong about each and come to consensus on a single religion. We haven't done that. But we also don't have to. I mean, if you have the right to do that, you're not worrying about it. Okay? But on the other side of the picture, you don't want that brought into a work environment. So leaders have to deal with that. They have to deal with that. Yes, I know this might be what you do in your particular, but we have, a diverse work group here, and we have to talk about how we operate as a diverse work group in all of this environment. So the church is a place where your values are developed and they're reinforced. When a church goes to the point where that they're isolating you from the rest of the world, you might be running into what's close to what's called a cult environment. It's one environment I lived in for a lot of years. And it didn't seem to be that way for me because the inner circle was so together, so united, and so supportive of each other. It was that I didn't care about the outside world. I didn't need to care about them. This was satisfying all my needs in this nice little inner circle. But I was missing all of this other stuff that was going on out here. And usually it takes a pretty radical thing for people to recognize, oh man, I've been locked up in a cult all this time, and I thought I was in the best church in the world. and I was ignoring everybody and arguing with everybody else about why my church was the best church, and they didn't know what the hell they were, the rest of the world didn't know what the hell they were talking about. So these are the things that can happen, and you need to be aware of those things. And those are things in an organization. If you're going to run a business, you're going to have a diverse work group. I don't know of very many people, unless it's a very small business, they keep it in the family, or they're small enough where they don't need a lot of employees. You start getting over 100 employees you need, or 500 employees, or 1,000 or 10,000, you have a diverse work group. And you're going to get impacted by some of this stuff. And how you use interpersonal communication is going to help you guide and thread through all these nuances you have to deal with as a leader. It can tell you, if you understand a little bit about what's going on in a particular philosophy or religion, you have the capacity to at least hear and empathize with somebody. If you are exceptionally on the extreme radical end of this, and you start applying your radicalization, you are not open. You are not actively listening to an employee. You have shut down a big portion of what that employee is going to use to talk to you about how they feel sometimes. So These are things that I'm bringing these up because they're not things that happen on a normal basis. They're happening more frequently now, but it's things that you're not going to probably get taught in a leadership development course because that it's touchy. They don't want to sit down and discuss this. And I can do it because the common thread here is I don't care where they're coming from, what philosophy they're coming from. The common thread is the interpersonal communication connection. They all have to come at it from creating a message, sending it to you, you receiving it, talking about whether you believe it or not, and how you talk about that oftentimes can diffuse a lot of this frustration that comes with the core values and the other things that are said in there. But you should be taught about that too as a leader, but we don't seem to do that very much. But you should be taught about that. So we're often challenged by all these behaviors contrary to our values and stuff. So when the organization's focusing on impacting values within, say, a church and the values outside of the church, there's a lot of dynamics involved that you have to learn to communicate. And how you deal with those is part of what I want to talk about in the upcoming parts. One of the consistent things that is absolutely no question about it, everybody pretty much sucks at active listening. they they think they're good at it, but even people who are trained in this somewhat aren't trained as much as they should be. But let's say a therapist. Therapist is trained to be an active listener. They probably are as close to being a great active listener as anybody else you're going to run into. Now, and so because they're trying to work with that. So, but even they get hung up, and if they're not taught this, if they're not taught active listening, they get hung up in the superficial side of it. They don't understand why the listening and the nonverbal cues from the visual and the listening, those two senses themselves, how powerful they are in helping you understand where somebody else is coming from. And either coping with that situation as it's evolving, solving the situation that may have already evolved, or either preventing something from happening in the future. I took a job as a bouncer, not a well. He had hired bouncers, and he wanted to convert the image of the lounge at that time bar to a lounge and raise the clientele, be able to charge a little more for drinks and stuff like that. And so he hired me to come in and help him work through this. And I said, well, one of the better ways for me to do this is let me work as security guard for you, and because I'm going to be touching everybody in your bar, or not touching him, but talking to him and contacting, and hey, how you doing? No, you can't do that, and throw you out, kind of guy. So what I discovered was that was a phenomenal environment to identify potential situations, potential problem situations. You could see it non-verbally. You would not even have to talk. I could be across the bar and I could non-verbally tell that I needed to be over close to that area because it was beginning to be a little more exciting than we want it to be. And having that capacity to see that, you could go in and begin to communicate with people and say, I can see, yeah, this is, I can see how you're frustrated with this. And you start talking through this and you say, why don't you move over here and you hang out here and you guys, you need to kind of not be asking this person to dance, or whatever that is that you're doing that separates them. You stopped it. You prevented the activity from happening. We did that so many times, and over a period of time, those people who were really wanting to go into a bar where they could get into a ruckus. I mean, that was their machoism. That's right. They stopped coming, and then other people came who never came before, who felt it more safe and secure. That was a nonverbal behavior interaction. It was an interpersonal connection that allowed me to go over, and before I even reached the person, I had a plan. What's going on? Like, I know that you would love to pound this guy in the face, but have you thought about your job tomorrow? I mean, we got to report this to your employer. We're going to call the police. The police are going to tell your employer. How are they going to react? They're not going to fire you, take over this? Well, I didn't do that before. Well, that's how we do it. So, okay, well, I don't want to do that. Then they go get a drink somewhere else. This is true. Active listening, pay attention to nonverbal behaviors, most critical aspect about this that you can learn, grasp, and we've said it now for 10, 11, 12 weeks in a row here. And I'm going to continue to say it until hopefully it sinks in and you get a better grasp of how to do that effectively, because there's a lot more to it than what people are teaching in leadership development or teaching in communication courses. There's a lot to it that you need to sit down and discuss and go through and practice and learn. In the personal realm, nonverbal communications critical for evaluating messages. Active listening is critical for showing respect and understanding. And in families, particularly as children go older and developing their differing points of views, a lot of times in a faith environment, kids grow up in a faith environment, the parents are just absolutely distraught if the child goes, I don't think I want to do that. It's not for me. And they go, you grew up in this your whole life. And you go, yeah, but I was out here and I found this, and I don't know, it fits me better, Dad. No, you can't do that. See, that's part of what gets to be disruptive when you start taking these values and restricting people, and particularly when they get to the age where they can begin to make some decisions on their own. Now, hopefully, if they're telling you they want to join a cult, you could try to talk them out of that too. But frankly, I've found that doesn't work very well, to be honest with you. They almost have to be in it, get in it, and then you not lose touch with them because they're in it. So when they ask a question, they all of a sudden discover, oh, maybe I'm in over my head here. What do you think? You're there for them. You're there for them. That's why I tell people don't get engaged in judging and trying to ridicule MAGA. There are a lot of great people in MAGA. It's not made up of a bunch of blithering idiots that don't care about anybody, that just simply want to idolize Donald Trump. There was a need. He told him he would give them. And that's how he got elected by this group of people. It wasn't that they necessarily cared about Donald. A whole bunch of them tell you that, if Donald would give me, more higher wages or, lower costs and all that, food and all that kind of stuff, I don't care what he says or does. I mean, I've seen other people do that. I just care about him delivering this. And he said he would deliver that. Well, now that he hasn't, they're beginning to question that. And that's not a group of people that you want to ridicule or judge. You want to help them. You want to be there for them when they ask questions. And you do that with learning how to actively listen and the questioning process. Well, learn a lot about how to ask right kinds of questions, when to ask them, how to ask them, those kinds of things. So as people begin to respond to you, you get them in this mode of almost self-discovery. They're answering their own question by you simply raising a question, and they go, by thinking through it and responding to you, they come up with that kind of answer. So this active listening, all this kind of stuff is critical. It's also critical for you to develop what you need in yourself as a leader and as an individual to make sure you're asking the questions that are right for you. Okay? And we don't teach that to leaders. Think about yourself. I want to know what's right for you. Tell me more about you. How do you think about you? What do you think about you? Really, single biggest thing we've missed in leadership development, in my mind, over the last 5 decades. So this personal realm of nonverbal communication is critical, along with this active listening. Interpersonally, this is how we're connecting. This is how we're talking to each other in an environment. I'm showing you this as a leader. This is a personal environment. But this happens in churches. This is where we have debates. This is where people get upset about churches and leave them or come to them, either way, through these dynamics of how things are affecting their lives. People come to their bosses and talk to them about all kinds of things that are impacting their life. And that boss may not have the minute understanding of what's going on in their life, and will make a judgment that just turns them off, and they're gone. They quit, and they were a good employee. They were just struggling with this one issue. I've seen that so many times. And it's hard to get that leader to, because they're going, well, I can replace them. Well, hell, you can replace you. You can replace everybody. But what about that person? What about the people that were around them that kind of liked the job they were doing and liked working with them? And now you're going to bring in somebody new and disrupt that whole thing. And that means somebody has to train him. That's probably one of them. So all those dynamics are in play here. As a leader, there's so much more about this interaction that you need to learn and understand. The more you know and understand about this, the faster and better you will be as a leader. So active listening is critical. It's to help discern differences between what's practiced in a church and what you practice within your family at home. Okay? That happens a lot in the church environment. It happens in the business environment. People practice things differently at work than they do at home. Now, at times, that causes problems. You get thrown out of a church or you get fired over personal things that are happening at home. Seen that happen. So, the power in the message is congruity, balancing the power of peace with worldly dissonance. Be congruent. Make your messages that you say and deliver consistent with the way that you behave when you deliver them, so that you're clear and concise. And do the same thing while you're getting feedback, and make that work for you during feedback as well. So the power of peace is beginning to use the information, to use interpersonal communication to gather more information, to make yourself more aware, to learn more about yourself, to really take the time to do some good, deep assessment. Retirement is that's a nice place where that happens. My problem is that it needs to happen a long time before that. I mean, you got a lot of time to think about all the things you screwed up in your life. what you need to do is start thinking about them early on. Now, this is stuff we need to be promoting with teenagers and people coming up through the ranks. Being able to recognize how other people are also doing, your sense of being able to adapt to them. No, a lot of times that'll affect the timing of when you want to discuss something with them or not. If they've had something happen really bad over the phone just recently, it may not be the best time to bring them in for a performance discussion. Just say, hey, look, I ran into something. I need to postpone this till tomorrow. Are you okay with that? Yeah. You actually didn't. They were able to feel like, oh, great, now I don't have to be pounded on that side too. So the value of navigating the conversations, that book I write, is all about this coming together, that communication process and how it fits with the psychological interpersonal side of things with other people. I highly recommend that. Allowing others the power of self-discovery. Just your ability to question correctly, the ability to help somebody work through something as opposed to just telling them they're wrong and they're stupid. That carries the true weight of the message about interpersonal communication. To empower others, your nonverbal cues must align with the words and concepts and knowledge and how you're coming across to the person. So what you're saying to them, you got to use the right words, but that nonverbal has to back that up. When those two can connect and they're consistent, you're congruent, you have much more people are listening to you much more effectively. You got much better chance of getting your message across clearly. And clarity of message is a key point. So by fostering a culture of being open in your communication, transparent, talking about these things, don't let them fester, don't let them hide. Bring them to the surface, get them out, communicate. We can harness the collective intelligence of everyone, and this leads to better decision making and prevents minor misunderstandings from escalating into really divisive issues. And that happens in churches the same way it happens in businesses. Okay? You just may not see it because you're not in there every day. You may only be in there on Sunday. But trust me, these are happening in church environments also. Communicating the why. Okay, that's a good point too. Just as in business, communicating the rationale and vision behind a family or church problem issue you're discussing helps a lot. Don't just, this is where questioning your ability. I have a whole segment, and it's in Renaissance Leadership Odyssey, or Renaissance Leadership Podcast on YouTube. I have like a five-hour series there on how to ask the right question and why you want to ask the question and some examples about it. And you should go look at that in light of understanding active listening. And I will tell you, you're not going to watch a video, even 5 hours of videos. You're not going to watch this video. You're not going to read a book and be able to go just do things. You have to get out and apply what you're learning. That's why I wrote workbooks with my communication books, so that you actually have to go out and do the exercise. It sounds simple. It's a go observe this. Now, but then you have to journal what you observed. Then you have to write something about how it's impacted what you did the next day, how you're going to use it to change what you did the next day, or something like that. Those are the kinds of exercises that are in these workbooks. They appear simple on the page, but if you do these things correctly and do them consistently time after time after time, over and over, you're going to get better, and it's going to be more second nature to you. And one of those things is, don't just hand somebody something Don't show them how to do something. They have to understand it. The more they understand it, the better they will be at it in the end. Does it take a little more time? Yes. Is it time well spent? Is what I say. Okay, so mastering the art of interpersonal communication is a journey that transforms not how we lead, but how we love, how we live. From the dinner table to the church hallway to your office and your office building, your ability to listen actively, align with nonverbal cues, and your value systems and how you want to live unlock a really deep level of connection that's important. So if somebody is telling you don't get close to your people, I'm telling you that's probably the worst thing you can do. You don't have to be best friends, but you have to have enough interaction and know how to connect with your employees and care about them enough so that they'll want to say to you, you are my leader. I want you to be my leader. I grant you the authority to lead me. Please lead me. I need you to lead me. That's what comes from all of this stuff. So that's primarily just so you see that it's not just a church environment that you're coping with here. This is something that's happening in churches. It's happening amongst friends. It's happening in families that have struggles. It's happening in a lot of areas. The principles of what we're talking about in communication can help you connect and become more effective in helping other people as well as yourself in a host of different environments, not just your work. So this is kind of my way of hopefully helping you see that before we leave this realm of pain points for leadership. This would be the 11th one out of the top 10 that I would say is there. Just kind of reinforce your thoughts in those areas. If you have any kinds of ideas about this that you would like to talk about, communication is an extremely important part. If you are dealing with someone who is a MAGA member and they're struggling now with MAGA and they don't know if they can come back to you because you've isolated them because, I just don't want to talk to you about it, as opposed to hanging in there and working through it with them. This is your opportunity to think about what I said here tonight and start back. Think about it. Get some help if you need it, because that person's worth coming back to and talking to. And everybody, I made that mistake and came out of it. And nobody brought me out of it. It would have been much easier if I'd have had somebody to talk to. But I can tell you the psychological damage that happens by someone being unduly influenced, being part of a cult for 10 years like they were with Donald Trump. Coming out of this, they're going to need a lot of help. And they need to know it's okay to ask for that help. Probably make life a lot better for you and a lot better for them if we learned how to do that. And interpersonal communication, learning more about this, getting really proficient at it, carry a long ways down the road. As I guess, I'm not a podcaster, but I'm told if you subscribe and join me and watch and comment and like and all those kinds of things, it helps more people see what we're showing you. Now, I put some of this behind a paid, most of this is behind a paid subscription. There's a lot of some of this it's free over on YouTube if you want to go over and watch those channels, but subscribe over there too. But I guess that subscription is how we do this. I am not a super fan of social media. I'd much rather be sitting here talking to you over a cup of coffee, uh, you and I, and or you and your group of 6 or 8 people, however many. But we would be close to each other. We would be practicing these interpersonal communication skills. And so, if you do have questions, if it's something that you want to know about more about, if you want to go find my books, they're on my website, victorvogel.com, victorlvogel.com. Either one of those will get you in there. I bought both of those. So you can buy those books. If you want to, if you read something and it's got you excited, and you want to go out and try and play with it, and you just have some questions, you can always call me and schedule one of these video conferences with me. I like video conferences. I don't like to do things through chats. I just don't feel you that way. I can't read you very well that way. At least with video conference, I can see you and I can talk and we know each other a little better. So I'm inviting you to come share with me. Those are all free conversations. I don't charge for those. So I like talking about it. If I think I can help you, that's great. You have a good evening. And I hope you share this with some other folks and you guys start talking about this stuff seriously because we really have some stuff we need to get out from under in this country. And good leadership is definitely something that's going to change what we need to do in that realm. So let me see if I can find what I'm supposed to do to finish this up. There we go. See you later.